In 2021, battle royales are everywhere. Games like Apex, Warzone, PUBG, Fortnite dominate the space. The game mode's fairly simple. Get a big map, populate it with lots of players, and have them fight to the death. A format that you'd think would lend itself pretty well to the big landscapes and varied gunplay the Battlefield franchise was famous for. Due to a rocky start, troubled development, and then getting all but abandoned by DICE in the end, Battlefield Firestorm really hasn't made the lasting mark DICE would have hoped for. But with a new Battlefield game around the corner, is there hope for Battlefield fans to see their game compete up against the titans of this genre? We'll break it all down, but first, let's deal with the obvious glaring weakness that faced Battlefield Firestorm in 2019 and still today. Not free to play. It had been bestowed down upon us by the gaming gods, but one game design commandment: battle royale games must be free to play. Thy player base come, thy will be done. DICE really rolled the dice and decided to put their BR, Battlefield Firestorm, behind a paywall. To be fair to them, this wasn't too outlandish of a move. COD Blackout did the same thing a year prior, which also eventually got replaced by Warzone. And this became a serious problem for a genre of game that requires large-scale player bases in order to function. The rules of this got even more obvious over time, with games like Fortnite being playable on mobile devices. Apex Legends just went to the Switch. Turns out for these games to function, you need a lot of players to sign on, especially a lot of casual players that don't mind being fodder to get gobbled up by the behemoths of the server from players like Shroud. Although just this week, Jack Frags posted a video explaining that Firestorm isn't precisely dead. With the announcement of the next game coming, the servers have been becoming populated yet again, but it's going to be a far cry if your expectations are set by these other larger scale free titles. So no matter what, it seems like DICE is going to have to adapt, just like Activision did, and fess up to the fact that if you want to compete in this market, you got to pack those servers with players. And the only way to do that is on the free-to-play model. Wasted potential. It feels like every respected shooter with solid mechanics has successfully transitioned into the BR market. It feels so easy to imagine a really awesome battle royale with Battlefield mechanics, but we just haven't seen it yet. Instead, what we got with Firestorm was a bit of a mixed bag. Developed by Criterion in partnership with DICE, the game mode did achieve a lot of the cool Battlefield moments you know from the Frostbite engine. Battlefield games are all about literally blowing the doors off. So if your foe is hiding in a corner in a house somewhere, you can satisfyingly demolish what otherwise would be impenetrable cover in other battle royale games. But the problem is trying to stay true to those mechanics makes the gameplay feel a bit unbalanced, which if you're a BF fan, you know being in a tank is always more fun than on the receiving end of the tank. And properly balancing the loot reward system in a BR is everything. In Firestorm, you can capture loot points, which spawns some powerful weapons, but it also alerts everyone on the map to your presence. The same can be said for the vehicle lockups, which, although are powerful when in use, have severe downsides themselves, where the vehicles need to be refueled or can be easily wiped out by anti-vehicle weapons. And if you're a BR fan, you probably are already seeing some of the problems with this design. With enough of these games being out for the past few years, we all have a good sense on what is a good scaling of power. You want the gaps between items to be interesting, but not overwhelming. But Battlefield always immersed you in that sense of raw destruction. So whereas in other BRs, you can get extra health, a better weapon, or resources, which begin to give you an advantage that you can snowball into the late game to give you that sense of hope that if you just get the right gear, you can get pretty far into the round. Firestorm doesn't really accomplish any of these things, not to a rewarding nature anyway, because whereas the push and pull of solo sacrifices for objectives or making a heroic play to destroy a tank in a normal Battlefield scenario, like when you're playing Conquest, in the battle royale genre, you don't really want to feel like you're that expendable if you have the right thing that should push you towards the late game. This is something I'd say that COD Blackout suffered from, where if there isn't enough ways to create a skill gap or at least a gear gap, the thrill of competing in these games kind of loses its luster. Nobody wants to feel like the cannon fodder, at least not reliably, which is all a shame because the Frostbite engine produces some of the most beautiful graphics in gaming and can do things that other games just literally can't physics-wise. Explosions are immersive, the sound design is great, chaos and destruction all around you, but whereas that was easier to take part in their traditional Battlefield modes, the BR didn't really translate it, unfortunately, and we haven't even got into the loot system yet. Despite all this potential, the major Achilles heel to this mode is the looting is unacceptably annoying. Modern FPS BRs handle this by making loot easy to navigate through so you can quickly grab the better gun and get on with running and gunning. In Firestorm, though, sorting through items was clumsy, as they would stack on top of each other and you'd struggle to quickly pick up useful items like armor or ammo. Compare that to Warzone, which just automatically picks those up. It's a no-brainer. They have to work that out. And it's no wonder that Firestorm failed to compete. The game forces you to stare at the ground like you're searching for a lost contact lens, picking up basic essentials you need to play the game. Meanwhile, Pro Legit Shots 420 over there has shot you in the back of the head while you weren't looking. Great, Battlefield. I hate it. The problem is, this loot system doesn't make the survival element any more realistic. It's just a needlessly convoluted waste of time in between the gunfights. Older versions of BRs that were more survival-based could get away with this. I still remember how clumsy DayZ was, the original mod, but the genre has just evolved so much since that time. Other major gameplay problems, despite Battlefield normally being an innovator in large map design, normally being the shooter with the most players on a map at a given time, when other BRs have 100 players on them, Battlefield maps having 64 like they used to, which seemed a lot for a conquest game mode, now it's not that impressive. Battlefield Firestorm maps feel empty, making it feel less like you're on the front lines and more like you're playing hide and seek. Warzone has 150 players. 64 is just not cutting it anymore. The scenery's beautiful, I know, but I'm not on a nature walk. I want to play a BR. And then on top of that, the updates they tried to put in didn't end up working out too well. Update 5.2 added more issues on top of old ones. They tried to rebalance the weapons and raise the time to kill, but somehow this made Firestorm less enjoyable. Players were all of a sudden incredibly tanky, and it was really tough to figure out the number of bullets it would take to confirm a kill. Now, forget that. Now we're counting magazines. This made the weapons feel incredibly weak and make what should be a quick firefight exchange last an eternity. And made even more goofy when a bayonet could one-hit kill an enemy, meaning that bringing a knife to a gunfight was more effective than shooting a lot of times. And the problems continued. Hackers came in that caused a nuisance, and eventually, whatever dedicated fan base Firestorm might have been able to retain started to dwindle away. The community began to compile lists of cheaters and sent them to DICE, and initially DICE banned them, but over time it was obvious that DICE no longer cared about this game mode and stopped banning people, making Firestorm feel like an afterthought. An added game mode to Battlefield's roster, but not a standalone experience like we expect for every other battle royale. And then with what came next, that was obviously the case. Firestorm burns out. Eventually, DICE took over responsibility for Firestorm, but simply stopped adding updates for it. The main game for Battlefield kept getting attention, but not the BR game. Remember, EA owns Battlefield as well as Apex, so maybe they knew Apex was going in a better direction and told DICE to just leave it alone, which makes sense, but press F to pay respects for any player that wanted to see the Battlefield BR flourish. But having learned their lessons and a new Battlefield game on the horizon, is there a chance that our hopes for a well-balanced and modern battle royale in the Battlefield genre pan out? Battlefield 6. The fact is, we've already seen a publisher come back from the brink to compete in the BR genre. Just like Firestorm, Call of Duty Blackout was paid for as well. But Activision, releasing on a faster cadence, sent Warzone free to play, and the rest is history. With Battlefield 6's release on the horizon, it would be insane for EA to reject the wasted potential of Firestorm and not make another BR, but this time free to play. A play you would think EA would go to make, as they corner the market from both ends. Apex is doing a good job competing up against Warzone, but also taking the likes of other hero shooter genres like Overwatch. But for players that are more interested in the boots on the ground, Warzone still is the king for that. And that market share, Battlefield has a chance to compete with like it always has in years past, which could establish EA as having a two-headed dragon in the Battle Royale department. We've seen devs do this. This genre is expansive enough to handle all the old shooter mechanics we loved. Apex took the movement from Titanfall, Call of Duty's buttery smooth, straightforward, user-friendly gameplay is another route. I see no reason that DICE can't also have a seat at this table. And I say DICE because I think it's going to take that level of investment from EA to properly come at this genre. Outsourcing development for this is a bit of a no-go, especially when you're going to need innovation to level up your franchise to have an identity in what already is a pretty crowded market, but also the top genre in the world. If DICE takes the time to properly balance the number of players on the map to the power ratio of how you acquire items and makes it feel fair enough but also rewarding, it could have a winner on its hands. That's certainly a game I want to play, and if you do too, let us know in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave it a like, as well as click the subscribe button, as well as the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live. Don't miss out on the next upload. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for Acer Predator Gaming. We'll see you guys next time.